We were talking about the agenda for this way back in November, and I've been doing this a long time, 15 years now, and I was like, I think we have to talk about nurturing. And everyone's like, no, we're not going to do it. I'm like, I think we got to talk about nurturing. And because it's like this scary topic we don't want to talk about, right? Like we don't want to talk about it. And it's actually a scary thing to do. I don't know how many conversations I have with clients where they're like, I don't know, I think it's going to take me like 6 months to like figure out what to do. And I don't want it to be scary. I want us to jump in and figure it out because we have to, right? And I think that I have two amazing panelists that are going to come up and give you some practical advice on how they did it and how they jumped in. And the difference between now and 5 years ago, besides the fact that now, 5 years ago people were just buying Marketo and saying they had it, and now they're like, I think I might use it. You know who you are. That dynamic. I think today, in today's data-driven market, I think that we actually have a lot more material to work with to make this work, right? And so, we just wanted to give some practical examples today of how you can jump in and like really get going. And going into this presentation, I thought, we do so much email marketing at TechTarget. And if anyone signed up for our list, I'll apologize now because we do a lot of email marketing at TechTarget. But we have a lot of good information and data for you, right? Like we do a lot of testing. We do a lot of demand generation, which is what kind of you're doing now. We have a lot of information to pass to you. So I just wanted to take 5 minutes before we bring up two great panelists to talk about, how they're doing data-driven nurturing, to give you some practical advice that you can literally tomorrow use in your day-to-day on how to do email marketing, right? Because that's, you always have to have a conference. You want to be like, I used something. That was great, right? So let's talk about time of engagement. This seems pretty simple, but working for a US company, pretty complicated. So people are like, oh no, it's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I'm like, no offense, but no one in Paris is reading email from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They're reading it from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. after lunch when they actually are getting to things finally. In Germany, people read it in the morning. You want to catch them at 7 a.m. They're up, they're ready to go. They're done by 4 p.m. Like, they are not engaging with you anymore, right? UK, London, it's a commuter city. Everyone's engaging in the commuting hours, right? It's 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. We see the highest response, and 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on the end of the day, right? Everyone's on their mobile platform. That's why Computer Weekly, we have the CIO panel coming up, they see 22% mobile traffic, the highest of any site we have in our entire worldwide network, because it's a commuting culture. It's a mobile culture. And that's really important to identify. So these are immediate responses. Like I sent an email and you replied right away, right? What if we look at email for strategy from a duration-based perspective? What if we look at it to say, if I'm sending a relevant email, or I'm sending a series of emails, or I'm sending a lot of emails, when is the best time to engage, right? Because you don't want to send 3 emails on 3 days from 5 to 7, right? That's going to get people a little bit, you might put them off a little bit. So what we've done, and again, because we send a lot of emails, is we actually looked at expanding our time duration. We were like, what if we expand our time duration out? Do we still get the same response, right? We know we have immediate response best within those hours, right? That 30-minute response window. But are we going to get the same overall response in a longer duration if the content is relevant enough? And we do, right? So anywhere from this 5 a.m. time frame all the way to this 10 p.m. time frame, if your email is relevant and the content is correct, you're going to end up with a higher response rate. You can see this by our CTR by hour and open rate by hour. You'd be surprised how many people are reading email late at night and early in the morning, right? We have a lot of parents in the room, yeah? I get a lot of 2 a.m. emails from the US, I can tell you. If the content is relevant and you have some time to engage with that person, it's okay to strategize your email nurturing outwards, because if you're sending a lot of emails, it's good for expansion. I find that not a lot of our clients do. It's a very simple technique, and it works really well for us, is the landing page strategy, right? We call it a fulfillment page. And it just means that we have fulfilled a lead for a client. And that person, we have directed them to the content piece, but in a separate window, we have opened up a landing page for them. And we have said, hey, here's 3 other great pieces related to what you just downloaded or engaged with that you also might be interested in, right? Automatic nurturing, right there. And you might think, okay, yeah, maybe they'll engage. Yeah, we see 19% of our leads come from a landing page, come from a fulfillment page. And that's in the UK. In Doc, I see 28%. 28% automatic re-engage. 28% of people I don't have to email again because they've already done it themselves, right? That's the best thing, when people do things themselves, right? Things like this really, really, bring a lot of engagement, and they're simple, strategic things that you can do tomorrow. So let's talk about email opens. I have a team of 3 people that sit in London. Their entire job is optimization. Their entire job is email strategy. They just sit around all day and think about how can I get people to make more leads for clients. And they think about open rates all day long. Opens are by far the #1 thing that they think about, because if people are opening, they're engaging. And you have to understand, as Vula mentioned, they get a lot of engagement. They get a lot of email. You guys know you get a lot of email in your inbox, right? And so, are you going to stand out? How are you going to stand out? So why do people open email before we go into the tips? They open email because it's unique, stands out in the crowd. Maybe it's relatable, or it's humorous, or triggers a memory, right? Maybe you're emailing about something relevant to the moment. Could be a topical relevant because you're researching right now, like an open system strategy. Or it could be, an actual event relatable, like who's going to, relate to the marketing of the upcoming wedding. Could be either or. I've seen both come from IT vendors. Could be brand recognition. Could be that that's a vendor that you're actually working with, right? And then you recognize to engage with them. It also could be that you open everything. And you laugh, but if you're German, if there are any Germans in the room, you open everything, right? And that's bad because it actually means they engage with everything, and it means that your email copy strategy is like very limited because they're like a 1-2 subject line out, like you're done. So your email copy production goes way up. These are just some of the top open rates at TechTarget from the UK, our top subject lines of engagement. Tips and tricks of a good subject line. Obviously, you can have a really good subject line if it's just relatable to the content and they're going to engage. But sometimes if you're not seeing the engagement that you really want, like sometimes if your open rates are a little low, but your click-through rates are amazing, right? If you got that like 10% open rate, but 3% click-through rate, and you're like, well, people are actually really engaging, so what's happening there, right? Sometimes it's a shock value. Sometimes it's just a personalization, right? Throw the company in the subject line. Throw the first name in the subject line. These are all doable in your automation systems. The power of numbers. Surprisingly, and this is my team because I would have never done this, putting the number of page views or putting the number of pages of the guide in the subject line does very well. And I'm confused by it still to this day, but it does. Shock value. Our #1 subject line for 2017 was hard disk drives are dead. They're not dead, but they're very much alive, trust me. However, people are like, oh, wait, what? And they engage. You stop them. That's all it's about. It's about stopping them. It's about stopping them so they open the email and they engage with your good content, right? Also, ease of use. The 101, a very US colloquialism, but it works. It works in the European market very well. It even works in Germany and France. And also, like, the for dummies type of element works as well. There are a lot of different words for that, but we tend to use dummies as well. And something like that, that engagement works as well, especially with like your, awareness type engagement. So just lastly, before I bring up a panelist, top subject line keyword performance. So this is from October to December. In our 4 key markets, we added Nordics here for those. You can see the differentiations between markets and what they look at. And some of the interesting things that we find, like personal pronouns in Doc, do very well. They don't in France. I don't know why. They never have. We tried them for 3 years. Doesn't work. My advice, just don't do that. Verses in France, that works very well. The word secret works really well. Some of this engagement is actually very interesting of like the keywords that people pick up, but these are important things to pay attention to and things that can really help you get that open rate. And so with that, I'm going to call up today's nurturing panel, Gerten and Matt. A question for both of you. Now, can you give me an overview of a standard nurturing strategy you are running for you or for one of your clients?
Okay, maybe I start. Ladies first. Thanks, Matt. So obvious nurturing goes further than email nurturing alone. It's about that entire journey, how to touch upon your prospects, customers. But for sake of being pragmatic, and I think that's the key on nurturing, be pragmatic. Let's focus on what we do on email nurturing. So we guide our prospects through that journey to see to get the business value. Actually, we have nurtures that start with our freemium product, so our business analytics product. We give that away for free. But of course, we guide these people to the journey, to prospect nurtures, to installed base nurtures. So actually, we use a drip nurture strategy. But like Kevin was saying this morning, for people that are really interested and researching, it doesn't make sense to drip, because if they're really interested, you will not be able to spam them. Mm-hmm. So we changed that to a Netflix binging style. And then I think that's sort of the main thing. So we have different nurtures depending on marketing persona, depending on the stage in the funnel, and we guide them through that journey. Hope that helps.
It's kind of interesting because we work with a number of different clients. So the types of kind of email automation that we're doing vary all the time, from something that's quite a basic drip campaign to something that's a lot more behavioural. And it's kind of it's kind of interesting talking to a lot of people here, because we sit on the other side of the fence, where we're kind of from the outside looking in on the client, and we're kind of always trying to advise what best practice really looks like. So a part of that is kind of moving into the behavioural space, making sure that we're aligning content and the customer journey with how people actually behave and think and feel and things like that, rather than going, well, we'll give them something every week and hope they read it every Monday, because that doesn't quite work if you're just a normal person. And I've come from an e-commerce background as well, so I was kind of always intrigued and slightly frustrated by B2B, in that we're sometimes a little bit slow in doing these bits and pieces. And it's like, well, if I've gone onto an e-commerce site and I've looked at some products, I'm immediately served on social media, why haven't you completed the basket, or what were you interested in here? And it's like, well, the technology's not different just because we're in a different industry. So it's kind of trying to change that mentality as well, so that we're kind of having a lot more shop windows open for our customers. So we're retargeting on social, we're building custom audiences into other media channels as well. So it's kind of really interesting. It's different from every single campaign. There's no one answer.
You talked about behavioral modeling, which it's something that is coming up and a lot of people are considering in B2B market now. Like you said, it's very prevalent in B2C, but it's a little bit more difficult in B2B. How do you think this has changed nurturing strategy recently, or where do you think it's pushing people to go?
Again, it's interesting. It's just making sure we're aligning natural buying behavior with the kind of programs that we're putting out there at the moment. So the thing that's been really fascinating on some of the campaigns we're doing, we've kind of, with one particular client, we switched from doing a kind of a drip cadence, which would go on for 3 or 4 months perhaps. And there's a filtering of leads that are coming through over an extended period of time. Okay, that's great. But we switched the most recent campaign to something that's a lot more behavioural. So the sales team are going, well, we're kind of expecting leads to come in a few months' time. It's like, well, no, they're here actually. In one particular example, in the second week, well, we've got 5 or 6 leads who are already ready. They consumed all the content in one go. That's fantastic. So we're accelerating the sales pipeline. It's not all this kind of talk and preparation for building a campaign. Well, building a really good behavioural model that supports that means we can accelerate the pipeline. The customer's interested now, and it allows the sales team to prioritise, the strongest leads that are coming out of it.
Yeah, and to add to that, so absolutely. Intent data, for example, what we use. So actually we use that to identify what's ready to be pushed to sales or to qualification. And like Matt is saying, if you can speed up that nurture process, they go faster through that nurture process, because if they're in a Binching style, if they're able to select themselves how fast they would go through that cycle. But then we use the intent data to, on top of that, identify what needs to be pushed to telemarketing or sales, and then from there being handed over. But actually I think, and Kevin actually triggered me this morning, I think that the information we can get from nurturers is actually probably also useful to use as input into your behavioral modeling. Because if this, how active they are engaged in your nurtures, tells something about their willingness, propensity to buy, and intent.
If anyone has any questions, just please raise your hand. We'll give you a mic and we can interrupt. Do we have one question right here? Let's bring the audience.
So if you take email out of this, what strategies and tactics are being used for self-nurturing?
For self-nurturing, we kind of try and combine different sources as much as we possibly can. So a lot of on-page stuff as well, and it's kind of been presented there with kind of a self-service page. We're trying to kind of align where the customer is in their content journey across as many channels as we possibly can. So if they're on site, we're making sure we're properly signposting people to the next piece, so moving from the top of funnel into the middle of the funnel as well. And if we've got the right technology, and there's so much important to getting the right stack and making sure everything is tightly integrated as you possibly can. If you've got the right technology, you can go, hey, your middle of funnel piece of content is now being shown to you on social media, and you're being retargeted in the right way. So there's no one easy answer for that. It depends so much on the technology stack, but anything is kind of possible with the right setup.
Yeah, so it all comes down to being able to measure and analyze and explore what people are doing during those journeys, and reuse that. So I also second that self-service nurturing, that's a crucial one, but any engagement point, so when is your BDRs or sales, when are they going to reach out? After that, maybe you should push them, instead of an engage nurture, into a convert nurture, which of course obviously has different content, and you can adapt that to that. Yeah.
Any other questions? I have another one. When do you bring sales into the nurturing flow? We talked this morning, there was a lot of discussion about, the nurturing flow when you're bringing it to the BDR and not. Do you actually, if they're in nurturing, do you wait for the full MQL output normally? Or maybe if it's aligned with an ABM strategy, you have a different way of going through the flow? Is there any deviation to that in some of the strategies you've been doing?
Was explaining during the previous question. So we nurture in an engage journey. We will hand it over to sales based on intent scoring, etc. And then after that, based on how sales moves on with it, we will push it into a convert nurture. And of course, that's all. The difference is the content. It could be the pacing of how fast the nurtures are going. So the engage nurture is more about explaining anything about data analytics. It's more industry, thought leadership. And we're not going to sell our click specifically. But of course, in the convert stage, it's all about the Gartner Magic Quadrants, all about proof points. So with us, it's a bit of a fluid model.
That's really similar for us. There's one particular client we work with on an ABM program where we're looking to combine lots of different types of data. So we have tech target data coming in as one particular way of managing intent that's coming into the program, alongside a marketing automation program. So we kind of met up at the beginning of this program with that particular sales team. We're really trying to establish what they're looking for. So what they really wanted was account consensus. So it's all very well having one person come through and kind of hit MQL lead, but when you're looking at a strategic account, like a big bank or something like that, it's a little bit meaningless sometimes. So how do we kind of bring the bigger picture in there? And it's like, well, actually I want a trigger to go off when 10 people have hit MQL status. And ideally, I want them to kind of be in a very similar team or in a very similar department. And that's been really fascinating because we've kind of started doing that. We're setting those triggers up. And it's starting to fuel, personalized ABM approaches because, we obviously do content creation as well. And we go, okay, well, 10 people in the cybersecurity team have all kind of read this amount of content, they've engaged with this part of our automation program. Now we're in a position to work out what we can take in as our story into that account. So again, the short answer is fluid, but it can obviously vary a lot.
Any questions from the audience at all? Oh, maybe we had another one up here. Yeah. Andy has a mic for you. 1 sec.
Hi there. You mentioned the term, which I love, which is binge nurturing. I just wondered if you've got any tips or particular tools or technologies you've used to allow a successful sort of binging when someone's really engaged.
Yeah, I think Kevin actually mentioned 2 this morning. Lookbook HQ and Uberflip. So that are 2, I think, TechTarget is suggesting to look at. Yeah. So effectively, it's a platform where if your prospects or your targets go there in their own pace, they can decide what to download or what to consume, because that's the binging. Consume at the time you want, in a speed you want. And then, of course, in the back you can see how fast people are going through that. And
Again, yeah, very similar. So we, on one particular program, we use a combination of dynamic landing pages, which we've done in-house, where we're constantly serving up the next piece of content aligned to all the content that we've got in the back end and obviously the customer journey as well. So we have that on-page piece, and then you bring in the power of a Marketo or a Pardot, and all of a sudden it's like, well, they read the first article here, we'll send them an email an hour later, and we're just testing those things as well, rather than going, well, it feels like it's, we should wait 2 days or 3 days. Why? Try it now, see what happens, and just have a look at the open rate, have a look at the click rate. If it's working, just keep doing it. If they keep reading it, then great. You could accelerate the pipeline into a couple of days if you really do it well.
actually, you might be annoying them if you don't send the next chunk of information, because if they're researching, they will be really open to get all that valuable information.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we learned.
Yeah, we find this as well. David has one. Oh, we're doing a mic pass. There it is. Thank you.
So what level of success have you had getting people to where they'll put their hands up and say, I need you to talk to me in nurturing? Because to me, that's the holy grail of digital nurturing, is getting them to the point where they want you to talk to them rather than having to use another stage to get their attention.
Yeah, so if you would be waiting for really a prospect raising his hand, like, okay, call me now. Actually, we use that in some nurtures, but in the end, it's a calculation we make based on historical data, what we see. So what will count as enough, for example, Marketo points or value to have them contacted based on the intent scoring, etc. So we look at how active have they been in what short term, and all of that leads to a calculation that they can be contacted. And how do you measure success? And I almost don't dare to say it, because apparently we shouldn't be that pipeline driven anymore, but it's pipeline measurement. So specifically from our prospect nurtures, we can see exactly what that's generating, because it's an engaged nurture, so we will be contacting them, it will be converted in pipeline. So that one is really easy to measure on conversion rates. And those numbers look really good. Yeah.
It's a really interesting one, because you don't normally get customers who are desperate for a salesperson to be ringing them while they're kind of browsing on the net. But we found at this point a lot of it could be just the quality of content you're putting down at the middle of the funnel or the bottom of the funnel. Mm-hmm. And we always try to challenge clients to be more challenging in themselves, instead of being, hey, look how good we are, look how good our product is. It's like, well, have the guts to have a comparison against your competitors. A little chart that says, I'm better for X, Y, and Z. And those things can actually be really effective, because you're putting the right content at the right time in front of the right people. And all of a sudden, that story could be so much more compelling for them, where they're like, okay, go on then, ring me. But it's equally having the options digitally for them to do that. It's all very well, obviously, measuring just clicks and opens and everything. But, we can put a phone number on an email as well. Try and put a bit of personalization around the email, going, well, your account manager is X. If you want to speak to X about this, you can do it right now. So it's kind of just, again, opening up those different opportunities and windows for people.
I think we'll have time for 1 or 2 more questions if we have one in the back ready to go. If we can get a mic back there.
Hi. Just wanted to know either your best practice or what you do in terms of reviewing and refreshing your nurtures, how long you leave it and kind of what your guidance is around that?
Yeah, again, that's
Good question.
a really good point, because we've got some campaigns that have been running for a long period of time, and sometimes you're dealing with data and content that, you know, can very quickly go out of date. So what we've actually done in the planning process of what we do is we build it in up front that we're going to have to refresh the story midway through the campaign. One particularly good example of that is we're running a particular campaign for a client where we're kind of talking about hybrid IT all the time. And we kind of recognise that during one of these optimization periods, the story's changed quite a lot since then. A lot of people are actually talking about multi-cloud now, and hybrid IT is a term that isn't actually getting the traction it used to be, and the click-through and the open rate and all those sort of bits and pieces. It's like, okay, well, you know, 3-6 months in, we need to change this. We need to change the story, and it might just be a little bit of, you know, just rejigging a couple of bits of content, but we're just refreshing it, making it different. And obviously, in terms of cadences and performance, that's something we look to review on a really regular basis, because if we're not getting the opens and clicks in the first few sends, then yeah, we're doing something wrong.
I think there's one more question in the back.
Hi, Guten, I think you said you talked about freemium customers. What sort of best strategies do you think work when you're trying to convert freemium customers into paying customers?
Yes, so freemium, just maybe a bit of explanation. So Click is offering business analytics, and we offer a free version of that analytics tools to our prospects. So people download it, and from the moment they download it, they can start doing analysis, anything they want. But of course, that freemium journey, as we call it, is all focused on helping these downloaders to start using the tools and the environments in such a way that they can get the value out of it. So it's really an educational nurture, maybe that's a better word, educational nurture, to help them on that journey.
I think we're all set. Thank you so much for all the information today. Thank you.